Welcome to Face the Nation. I'm Leslie Stahl reporting from the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Super Bowl 21 will be played here later today, climaxing one of the most bone-cracking, shoulder-smashing, tendon-tearing seasons in the history of professional football. Injuries are up as the sport becomes more and more violent. Broken bones and broken careers. The NFL Players Association says that 1986 was a record-breaking year for injuries.
Unnecessary ruckus, number 77 on the defense,
Quarterbacks were hit particularly hard, more than half the league starters missing at least one game because of injuries. Jim McMahon of the Chicago Bears missed over half the season.
The players are getting bigger. They're getting bigger every year, and they're getting faster every year. And, you know, when you have as big of bodies as they've got out there colliding now, you're going to have people hurt.
But the players blame their injuries as much on the artificial grass as on the ferocity of the tacklers and sackers.
New England lost 8 players playing on AstroTurf.
But the owners dispute the dangers of AstroTurf and disagree about the violence, too.
I don't feel there are necessarily more violent acts this year than there have been in the past.
Some of the biggest stars in this Super Bowl are the defensive players like Lawrence Taylor of the Giants, who talks about taking what he calls kill shots on the field.
I play hard, I play aggressive, and sometimes people will get hurt when you play like that, but long as it's not intentional.
To be good in football, do you have to be bad and mean and out to hurt someone? We'll ask quarterback Jim McMahon of the Chicago Bears, defensive end Dexter Manley of the Washington Redskins, and commentator John Madden of CBS Sports. Violence in football, is it getting out of hand? An issue facing the nation.
From CBS News, Los Angeles, Face the Nation, with National Affairs correspondent Leslie Stahl.
Our first guest is CBS Sports commentator John Madden, former head coach of the then Oakland Raiders. We spoke with him about violence in professional football.
I think football's a violent game, and when you get just big, strong, fast guys running into each other, that's a violent act. And I think the guys are just bigger and faster and stronger, and they're playing on the same size fields. You know, I mean, one time they made these fields, 53 yards wide and 100 yards long for guys where the big guys were 200 pounds. Now they got 300-pound guys playing. They got guys that are 250 that run 4.5 playing, but they're playing within the same parameters. And when those guys run into each other, that's a collision.
But aren't they actually told to go out there and hit harder than they've ever hit before and maybe put a guy out of the game if they can do it?
I don't think so. I think that they go out there and play to win. And defensive players by nature are very aggressive. And I think players and coaches and everyone talk that way. Come on, let's go get them. Go out there and you say things that you really don't mean. I mean, you say, let's go kill them. You don't mean you're going to kill them. It's just like anyone in business says, oh, we killed our competition. And I think that's the same thing. I mean, I think that players go out there and they want to win, they want to tackle the guy, they want to cause fumbles, they want to get interceptions, they want to make turnovers, but they really don't want to hurt the other guy.
When you were coaching the Raiders, did you used to use that kind of language to pump the guys up to go out and, Dexter Manley says, I'm going to clean their clock or whatever it is? Did you pump that into your players?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I never wanted to go out there and ever have a guy on the other team get hurt. And I'm sure that the players don't either. And I'm sure that if you look back on the injuries, the guy, obviously, that gets hurt is the guy that feels the worst. But the next guy that would feel the worst would be the guy who hurt him.
But guys are rewarded for sacking the quarterback. They have a whole statistic on how many sacks this guy makes, and then if he's made more than anybody else, he should get paid more. I mean, there's a whole mystique now about sacking the quarterback, and now all these quarterbacks are injured. They can't play. I mean, isn't there something here that's changing?
No, I don't think so. I do think one of the things that's wrong, though, is I don't really feel that they should let these guys hit the quarterbacks after they throw the ball. And I think that's a problem. And, that the guy is there and he stands and throws it, and then he's very you know, I mean, he's exposed and he can't protect himself, and then he gets hit, and I feel that shouldn't be.
And they don't allow you to tackle the kicker after he's...
Well, they don't allow you to hit the kicker, either the punter or the kicker, after he kicks the ball. And I kind of feel that, you know, I mean, that proves that they can do that. And I've always felt that they ought to take that same time. I mean, if you can do it, if you can avoid hitting a punter, if you can avoid hitting a kicker after they kick the ball, then you ought to be able to avoid hitting a passer after he throws it.
You definitely positively disagree with the idea that there's a new mentality out there that says let's put them out of the game. Let's ring their chimes or whatever they're saying.
Yeah, no, that's not. Yeah, I mean, that's not there anymore. In fact, that's there less. If anything, that would be less than it's ever been. I think, you know, you can't do that. You can talk about that, but you can't do that because they have all the officials there. They have cameras on every person, and, you know, I mean, that really doesn't happen. I mean, how often do you see it?
How often do I see a violent play?
Yeah.
Well, a lot. I think that they're replayed, instant replays.
Well, what are they? I've never seen them.
You've never seen a violent play where a guy really hit someone hard and then he's left on the ground and the doctor has to come out?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's violent. I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, that's a collision, yeah. That's
you mean the cheap shot where the guy,
the cheap
like
shot
the
or dirty
McMahon thing.
Is violent a bad word? I mean, if it's a bad word, I don't think it's violent. I mean, I think the two guys running into each other is violent. I mean, they hit hard. But see, football is vulnerable because it's a contact sport. Now, the do-gooders come out, and when they want to do this, you can do it. I mean, there's two sports where guys can plant their feet and hit, and that's boxing and it's football. So whenever you want to get in, they'll come up. There'll be boxing, they'll abolish it, and there'll be a story on football's too violent. Football's always been that way. I mean, you can go back, they were saying that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. 10 years from now, they're going to be saying it. But that's the game. That's what it is. No one's forced to play it. If they don't want to play it, they can't play it, they don't. But the guys who play it, that's the way they think. That's who they are. That's what they are.
What about AstroTurf? There are some studies that show that if a team changes from grass to AstroTurf, their injury rate will go up about 50% in that first season when they change over.
Yeah, well, I hate artificial turf. I mean, when they made the game, they didn't make it be played on plastic grass, and that's not natural, and the foot catches, and the only thing that can go is the joints. And you know, I've been against that stuff ever since they put it in. I hate that, and I think that's one of the things it does. I think they can show you stories or studies that show that it doesn't, you know, have any more injuries, but I really believe it does.
You do? Yeah. Do you think that's one of the reasons that there are so many injuries, particularly with the quarterbacks lately?
No, I don't think that has anything to do with quarterback. I mean, I think that has to do with injuries. I think injuries. Well, I've seen a number of no-contact injuries. I mean, we can get in that football's violent and all that stuff, but I've seen guys go out without hitting anyone. They just get they're running and their foot catches and the joint goes. And I've seen 5 or 6 of those this season.
Isn't it true that that these playoffs and most Super Bowls aren't even close? And they're not the great contest between two equals. It seems they're always tipped in one direction. Why do you think that is? Because
that's what winning and losing does. That separates it. Because what happens, you usually get two good defensive teams. Usually the teams that get there have the best defenses. Now, when a great defensive team gets on top, then they can play downhill. That's very difficult. Conversely, the offensive team has to play into a great defense, then they start forcing the ball, and then the thing snowballs on them. So, I mean, a lot of games look like they should be, you know, people say it's going to be 27-24, and it's 49-3, you know, or it's 17-0, because once a great defense gets ahead, then the whole game changes. It changes for the offense and it changes for the defense.
So in other words, if one team goes ahead really early, then it's all over?
I think so. I think, you know, with these defenses, I think the best game can be if Denver scores first. because the Giants are favored. I think going in, the Giants are a better team. But you don't know what's going to happen in that game. And I think if the Giants get ahead with their defense, I think it could very well be a shutout because they pick up momentum as they go. I think if the Broncos get ahead and make the Giants have to fight through that, it will be a closer game.
It's going to be a good game, you think?
I think they're all good. I mean, I've been there before, and I've won a Super Bowl, and I know that's the biggest thrill in sports. It's the biggest thrill there. It's a world championship. That year, you're the champion. They can never take it away from you. And when I hear people say that it was a boring game, I think, well, for who? It was boring for you because you wanted to see something? It wasn't boring for me. I was there. You know, it's like history. You know, people say history is boring. Well, if you were there, if you were at the Battle of Waterloo, that's an exciting thing. You know, muskets and stuff. So if you read about it and it's boring, then that must be the teacher who's boring. You know, so it's the same thing. I mean, do you look at it through, if you're there and playing and winning, it's exciting as heck. And then if you're losing, that's the biggest gap. I mean, the widest gap there is in sport is the winner of the Super Bowl and the loser of the Super Bowl. I mean, the winner is a world champion. The loser is thrown back in the heap with the rest. And in our society, we don't have any place. When no one walks around and says, we're number two, we're number two. You know, hey, go, we're two. We don't play second. You got to be first.
John Madden. We'll be back with Jim McMahon and Dexter Manley. Joining us here in Los Angeles, defensive end Dexter Manley of the Washington Redskins. My team, Dexter, sorry we didn't make the Super Bowl. And in Chicago, Jim McMahon, quarterback for the Bears, last year's Super Bowl champions. Let's start with Jim McMahon in Chicago. Jim, CBS News and the New York Times has a poll out saying that the American people think that the reason there are more injuries in professional football this past year is because of dirty plays. You were hit by what has been called an intentional hit this year. What do you think the reason is that there are more injuries?
Well, I think dirty play has something to do with it. But I think, you know, football is a violent sport. And I think it's a controlled violent sport. And I think the problems arise is when things get, like what happened to me in the Green Bay game, shots like that get taken at us. But I think that is up to the officials and it's up to the commissioner to make sure those types of things do not happen. I think. Are they
happening more?
Well, I think, I don't know if they're happening anymore. I know throughout the years in football there have been some cheap shots. And I know Commissioner Rozelle this year fined Charles Martin a 2-game suspension, which was the biggest or the most fines that he had ever handed down. And I think that's maybe one reason the game is getting so violent is because maybe he's not doing the kind of job that he should be doing, or the officials aren't doing that kind of job, because it's up to them to control the violence.
I want to talk more about the penalties, but first, let's come back to Los Angeles and Dexter Manley and ask you about why there are more injuries. You know, Lawrence Taylor of the Giants, he's the only person who beat you in the number of sacks on quarterbacks this year. He says he likes to go out there and have kill shots and put the people out he's tackling for a couple of months. He's actually said that.
Well, I agree with him to a certain extent. I think the game is a fun-loving game. It's a people's game, and we always have...
you agree with Jim McMahon, or you agree with Lawrence Taylor about the kill shots?
I agree with Lawrence Taylor with the kill shots.
That you go out there to really hurt someone?
Not really to hurt someone. You go out there to get your job done, but if you have a clean shot, you're going to take the shot. I mean, look here, we're not going out and playing tennis. We're going out to put the guy on his back, and however you have to do that, you have to do that. So I'm in favor of what Lawrence Taylor says, but to a certain extent, you don't want to go out necessarily in a guy's career.
You know, I agree with Dexter and Lawrence Taylor. I mean, the game, that's their job as defensive players to go after the offensive players. And I think if everything is within the rules, there's nothing wrong with it, because you can train your body to take those kind of hits. You know, that's what the weight training is for, is your off-season conditioning is for. But I think the problem comes when the stuff gets outside of the rules. You know, nobody minds a clean, hard hit. But when things start getting outside of the rules, that's where the problems arise, and that's where I think the officials and the commissioner have to do something about it.
I want to elaborate on what Jim McMahon said. I think the most important thing is that, see, in professional sports, you know, I think it's up to the coaches and their leadership to carry that responsibility out and teach that. I think that now there are some teams in the National Football League, particularly coaches, are teaching cheap shots. There's no question about it. I think the commissioner and the management council and the NFL Alumni Association, whoever, I think they have to get together on these type of tactics and find out. I think the coaches should be fined if they are teaching players to take cheap shot at good quality ball players.
Well, do you think the rule should be changed? John Madden says that there should be a new rule that a quarterback cannot be hit if he's in the pocket and he's thrown the ball. They don't hit the kicker after he's kicked the ball. What about a new rule like that for quarterbacks?
Well, I think the thing about it, see, people are overemphasizing. They want to protect offensive players, but they never really want to look at a lot of defensive players who's getting a lot of cheap shots also. I think people focusing on quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers, but you have to realize that there's a defensive lineman been taking a lot of cheap shots at linebackers, things of this nature. So I'm not saying let's just go out and protect offensive players because I think we're just as valuable as they are. So I think if we're going to protect, let's protect the whole league within itself.
Well, I have to smile because so many quarterbacks have been injured. They do seem to be a special
target. Well, there's a lot of defensive players been injured too. Statistics-wise, there is.
Jim McMahon, what about a new rule to protect the quarterback?
Well, I think something's got to be done. Like Dexter said, you know, if a quarterback is a big part of any football team, and they're supposedly the leaders, and you know, you look around the league, there's not many second or third team quarterbacks that can carry a football team when the starter gets injured. And I look at the rule for the punters. I mean, you can probably get punters a dime a dozen, but you can't find good quarterbacks that well. And I think, you know, if the punter kicks the ball and you hit him, it's a 15-yard penalty and the offense gets the ball back. I think there's something that's got to be done to protect the quarterbacks a little bit better because they are very vulnerable in that position once they've released the football and you've got these big bodies flying around you. It does take its toll.
All right, let me tell you that the second reason in our poll for injuries, according to the public, is drug use. Do you, both of you, feel that drug use, and I would like to include steroids in that, is leading to some of these injuries, Dexter?
Well, I would say that there's a player out there using drugs. Of course, that over a long period of time that your body will eventually wear down and you won't be able to keep that stamina up. And of course, then you won't play with that same intensity. So what happens is that your performance drop or whatever, then you go out lackadaisical. Then that's a possibility that you can get hurt because your body's not as strong as it would have been in the early part of the football season. But I think as an athlete, we have a role, we have a responsibility to the community because we're looked upon as role models. And I think that drugs should be banned from the National Football League.
Well, it is banned from the National. You mean steroid use?
Well, drugs, anything, drugs or pills, anything to that nature.
Jim McMahon, how much of a factor in the injuries, in your opinion, is drug use?
Well, I couldn't really say what factor the drug use is as far as injuries is concerned. I think you've got the illegal drugs such as, you know, cocaine, marijuana, you know, the uppers and this and that. But as far as steroids are not an illegal drug. Steroids are a legal drug. Doctors prescribe steroids for patients, and I think that you know, I think the American Medical Association ought to be getting involved with this and teach the people about what the steroids do to your body, because steroids, from what I've seen or from what I've read, they age your body so fast. And I think if people would realize the dangers of steroids, they would stay away from them.
Dexter, do you take steroids?
No, I don't even know what steroids look like.
But you know, we hear all the time that most of the defensive players on the line anyway take steroids.
And I would say offensive linemen and defensive linemen. First of all, I think you have to have natural ability that you can go out and compete. I think that when someone takes steroids, there's something missing there. So you have to go out and do things to add some type of substance that will help him to compete in the National Football League. And I'm not the one that's lacking anything.
Let me ask you both very quickly. Do you think there's going to be a strike, Jim?
I really don't know. I hope there isn't a strike because, you know, I enjoy playing football. throughout the fall or whenever I can play when I'm healthy. But you know, I went through the strike back in '82, and it wasn't a whole lot of fun. You know, not being able to play the game that everybody you know, that everybody that's playing loves so much. And it's I just hope everything gets worked out between the Players Association and the Management Council.
Well, I understand that nobody would like to have a strike. Everybody hopes there isn't one. But looking at the issues, do you support one?
Well, I really don't know all the facts or all the issues involved right now. I haven't been reading my collective bargaining agreement lately, so I really don't know. I haven't talked to our player reps at all since the season got over with, and I don't know what in fact we're asking for at this point in time or what. So I'm not in favor of a strike, but you know, if things go down that way, then I will support the league.
Dexter?
Well, first of all, I'm not in favor of a strike because I think that when we strike, we hurt ourselves, and I think we hurt the people, the fans, and I think that's most important. But most important is that I think if owners and owners, the National Football League owners and the NFL Player Association, I think if we can all be reasonable and come together and realize that not everyone out here want to be selfish, and I think that if we do that, I think we can avoid a strike.
Okay, final question. Jim, you first. Who are you picking in today's game?
Well, I'm picking Denver because I got a lot of friends on Denver. John Elway's a good friend of mine, and I would like to see Denver win. I know New York has a great ball club this year, though. They had a great team last year, but it seems they remind me so much of the year we had last year. You know, they're just going through the playoffs real well, and everything's going right for them. But I think Denver is a lot better than people give them credit for.
How many points?
Denver.
By how many points?
Oh, boy, I haven't made a right pick yet this playoff season, so I'm not even going to go through the points.
All right, Dexter?
Well, Jim, I'm going to have to agree with you. I like Lawrence Taylor because I think John Elway is a great quarterback, probably one of the best quarterbacks that can scramble and throw the football. But I think with the Giants' front seven, I think they're going to be awesome. I think they can control the Denver offense. I'm going to pick the New York Giants.
Points?
14 points.
As it should be. One guess for the Broncos, one guess for the Giants. On that note, I thank you both very much. Jim, Dexter, we will be right back. A new CBS News New York Times poll asked the public about why there were so many football injuries this season. The largest number of fans listed dirty play as the major cause of injuries, with artificial turf coming in second, drug use a close third, followed by lenient officials, bigger players, and playing time. But just under half think injuries are simply part of the game. On other subjects, the poll found that the public lists drug use as the game's biggest problem. 60% favored drug tests for the players, with only 35% saying that such tests would be an unfair invasion of privacy. The fans would like to see some changes. They want shorter games and maybe a shorter season. They definitely do not like artificial turf. And by a wide margin, they think the players are overpaid. Their favorite teams, the Chicago Bears and the Dallas Cowboys. Finally, the poll shows that women fans like the instant replay more than male fans. That's our show on the Super Bowl. I'm Leslie Stahl. May the best team win.